Hey, what's going on, guys? The Horror Man back with another video. When I returned to YouTube a little over a month ago, I counted down my top 20 favorite horror films of all time as my first video back. And in that video, I also mentioned that I would be doing a top 20 slasher film video. However, as you've probably noticed, I haven't posted that video yet. Because the thing is, I haven't even filmed one. I'm just having a difficult time really narrowing it down to my top 20 slasher films. It'll happen, I'm working on it. I'll definitely post that video, I promise you that. But this will not be that video. While I have been working on it and trying to figure out my top 20 slasher films, it got me thinking. There's a lot of horror movies out there that I may consider to be slasher films, but others wouldn't. And I think it's a pretty interesting topic of, what actually makes a slasher film a slasher film. So in this video, I have some movies from my collection, all of which may be considered slasher films to some, and not so much to others. And I'm interested in finding out your opinions. For this topic, I think the perfect comparison film is Sleepaway Camp. I don't think there's anybody that can deny that this is a slasher film. It has everything a slasher film needs, and it's a fantastic one at that. Between the point of view shots of the killer, the various ways that the victims are killed, there's the great twist ending in this one. It's just cheesy. There's some good comedy in there as well. It's atmospheric. It has the camp setting, of course. It has everything that a slasher film needs. So, again, Sleepaway Camp, definitely a slasher film, and we can use it to compare to the rest of these films to see if these films are indeed slashers as well. So what about April Fool's Day? Is it a slasher film? I've never really heard anybody not consider it to be a slasher film. It follows the same guidelines as your basic slasher, like Sleepaway Camp. But then it has that twist ending, and that sort of changes things. So what do you think? Is April Fool's Day a slasher? And if it's not, what kind of horror film is it? Here's another interesting one. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, I know a lot of people do in fact consider this one to be a slasher film, as do I, but I also know there are others who don't. So if you're watching this video and you don't consider the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be a slasher film, please comment below and let me know which subgenre of horror you think this falls into, if it's not a slasher film. And if you do consider the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be a slasher film, does that mean that House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects are slasher films as well? They're sort of the same idea. Rob Zombie definitely borrowed a lot from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even more so from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I would say, in my opinion. So what do you think? House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, are they slashers? If not, what are they? And what about Seven? I've never actually considered Seven to be a slasher film, but now that I think about it, it kind of is. You have a killer killing off his victims one by one based on the 7 deadly sins. And then you have some cops who are on his trail. It's not unlike Loomis being on Michael Myers' trail in Halloween. And I'm not comparing the two, but I guess in a way, they do follow some of the same format. Not all slashers are the same. So is Seven considered a slasher film? And if not, what exactly is it? Here's a thinker. Session 9. Now I know most people simply consider this one to be a psychological horror film, but what exactly is that? What makes this any different than any other slasher film? It's the main characters being killed off one by one by an unseen killer. We find out the identity of the killer at the end of the movie, yes, and there's some psychological elements, I guess, but there's also psychological elements in other horror films, such as Halloween, such as Sleepaway Camp. So what makes this any different? Session 9, slasher film or not? And if it isn't, what is it? Can a slasher be supernatural? In many ways, Michael Myers is. And Jason, of course, after he dies the first, second, third, however many times, keeps coming back and killing, so that makes him a supernatural force. A zombie, perhaps. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, we have Freddy Krueger, who, of course, is already dead, and, he kills people in their dreams, in their nightmares. Does that mean he's not a slasher? Does that mean A Nightmare on Elm Street is not a slasher film? Or is that okay? Can slasher films have supernatural elements? So, in the end, is A Nightmare on Elm Street a slasher film? I know most people consider it to be one. I do. Do you? And following along those exact same lines, we have Candyman, another supernatural slasher, if you will. Is it a slasher film? Candyman is also dead, and he kills people when they summon him by saying his name in a mirror. You know, he's not going around like the killer in Sleepaway Camp or even Jason Voorhees, but he comes to those who summon him. So does that make him more like a Pinhead? Is this more like a Hellraiser type film? Or is it a supernatural slasher film? Let me know in the comments. If slashers can in fact be supernatural, can they also be monsters? You have the killer in the Funhouse who sort of fits that description. Yes, he's pretty much a deformed human, kind of like Jason Voorhees, I guess. So I guess this makes it a slasher, right? The Funhouse? I would think so. A lot of people consider this one to be slow, since a lot of the killing doesn't take place till much later in the movie. But does that mean that it's not a slasher film? And if it's not, once again, what is it? And if slasher films can have a supernatural force, or a monster as the killer, can they also have robots like in Chopping Mall? Chopping Mall fits every trend of a slasher film. It follows the formula to a T. You have a bunch of teenagers in a mall being killed off one by one in various ways. It's cheesy, it's funny, it's over the top, but all the killings are being done by, of course, robots. So does that mean this is a slasher film, or does it make it more of a sci-fi horror film? Because I know that I personally have never considered this to be any form of science fiction. For me, this has always been a slasher film. And now that I think about it, it's kind of a unique one in that sense, in that I don't know any other slasher film that has robots killing people off one by one. So what do you think? Is Chopping Mall a slasher film? And if it isn't, what type of horror film is it? So to sum it up in one simple question, what makes a slasher film to you? Let me know in the comments. So that's it for now, guys. I know this video was a little different, but I hope you enjoyed watching it. I would love to know your opinion, so please comment below. Let me know which of these films you consider to be slasher films and which you don't. And if you don't consider any of them to be slashers, please let me know which subgenre you would fit them into. And with that being said, if there are any other films out there that you might consider slasher films that other people do not, or that you know of other people considering slashers that you don't, please let me know what they are. Let's keep the conversation flowing. I'll be back soon with more videos, guys. Thanks for watching this one. I appreciate it.